speaking with the UpTake. I wanted to ask you to contextualize this labor struggle we're seeing here in Madison. I mean, Wisconsin has been at the forefront of the labor struggle in U.S. history for a long time, for over a century. Can you give us a little bit of a history lesson?
Sure. Wisconsin was one of the birthplaces of the progressive movement in American history that happened at the turn of the 20th century. Teddy Roosevelt was one of the leaders, but also Fighting Bob La Follette, who was senator and governor from right here in Wisconsin, right here actually in Dane County. And so there's this long tradition of progressive politics in Wisconsin. We've also been the state that started organizing public sector workers, which is the heart of the issue right now. This was the first state to have an AFSCME, American Federation of State Municipal and County Employees Union. And so a lot of that happened in the 1930s. They're trying to roll back the clock to about 1931 here. The Republicans are, Scott Walker is, and people won't take it. They don't want to lose their collective bargaining rights. It's not really about budget cuts. It's about whether people have the right to collectively organize, which we thought, was our God-given right, or at least our collectively bargained and fought for right since 1935 in the private sector. And in the public sector, we've had it for decades here in Wisconsin, and yet here comes this Neanderthal Republican who wants to take it away.
Is it ironic that it's happening here in the heart of labor country, or is it perhaps fitting, given that there seems to be a concerted efforts by Republicans nationwide to take the fight to labor? Is it fitting thus that they're taking the fight to here?
Well, it's fitting that it's in Wisconsin because this is a union state, and this is a state with this rich lore of progressive history. Fighting Bob La Follette, he's got his name on schools, on streets, all over the state. People grow up with his lessons, in grammar school. And so this tradition of fighting back, of progressive action, is really in the bloodstream of Wisconsinites. So it's not surprising to me that it's happened. What's surprising to me is that it hasn't happened before and all over the country. And I think what we're seeing here is ground zero of the fight back. And other states are going to take inspiration. Workers in other states like Ohio and Indiana and New Jersey are going to take inspiration from the people here in Wisconsin who've been outside, tens of thousands of people for 4 days now, demanding a rollback of this bill, demanding to kill this awful bill.
Has labor been on its heels and a little quiet in recent decades? Does this present an opportunity?
Well, labor has just been, taking it on the chin for the last 30 years here, as this huge onslaught came in with Ronald Reagan, actually came in with Jimmy Carter and Paul Volcker at the Federal Reserve Board in 1979. That's 32 years of reaction, and there hasn't been a real good Democrat progressive in power, in presidential power. Jimmy Carter wasn't, Bill Clinton wasn't, Barack Obama isn't.
Right.
Change doesn't come from the top. That's what Howard Zinn, the great historian, has always taught us. Change comes from below. And here we're having, Howard Zinn's theory come proven fruitful to life here as change is coming from below here in Wisconsin. And I hope people around the country will take heed of what organized citizens just outraged about what their politicians are doing. Take heed of what's happening in Wisconsin. Do it in your own state.
What are your thoughts on the Democratic state senators who are hiding? We hear Rockford, Illinois. I mean, on one hand, right, they're sticking up for the rights of organized workers, not letting this go to a vote. At the same time, I mean, they've been accused of circumventing the democratic process. What are your thoughts on what they're doing?
I think they're very courageous and very innovative. They're doing what's absolutely necessary to block a bill that would just take away people's fundamental rights. The right to organize is a fundamental human right. It's in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that the United States is a signatory to, and yet we have these Republicans, far right-wing corporatists, who want to take that fundamental right away from people. And if by leaving the state for a couple days or a couple weeks, they can stop this terrible retraction of a basic human right, more power to them.
Next week, they probably will not be back in town. The Republicans can't pass this measure. How long does this go on? What happens?
Well, it's going to go on either until the Republicans find a Democratic senator and can ram this thing through, or more likely, or I hope, that some of the Republicans in the State House are going to come to their senses and realize we cannot just stuff this down people's throats. We've got to compromise. We've got to respect people's collective right to bargain. We've got to start negotiating like every other governor has done.
Thousands of activists have taken over the state capitol. Hundreds, if not more, are sleeping in the rotunda every night, it seems. Has this ever happened before in Madison?
I've been here 28 years. I've never seen anything like it. This is just the most dramatic, exhilarating event of my political lifetime, and I've been, a political editor for more than 30 years now, and it's it's amazing to see, the fight back come right here in Wisconsin. We saw people in Greece rebel. We saw people in Cairo rebel. We saw people in France and in Britain protest. Finally, the protest has come home, and it's about time.
Is there a direct inspiration drawn from Tahrir Square, what we saw earlier?
Absolutely. That's one of the inspirational things here. I would go to the square and do some reporting here in Madison, and I would see signs that says, "This is our Tahrir Square," or "Welcome to Cairo."
Yeah.
And it's incredible. People who saw other people taking great risks to exercise their right to assemble and to speak and to protest and redress grievances in Cairo, that has been a huge example for people here in Wisconsin, and I hope for people across the country.
As editor of The Progressive, how are you guys covering this? What questions are you asking? What are you most interested in examining here during these demonstrations?
What I've been looking for is just the human stories. I've been wanting to talk to people. I've been out just doing beat reporting with my reporter's pad, talking to people who are holding signs and who are there and just getting their stories. I heard this story from a woman named Kelly Corey. She's been a secretary at the University of Wisconsin Business School for 30 years now. She's not even making $40,000 a year. She faces a pay cut of $5,500 a year. She's got a kid in college, a kid in high school, and she's recovering from breast cancer. How in the world is she going to make it if this thing gets rammed through? And she understands that she needs the right to collectively bargain. She can't do it herself. I was on talk radio this morning in Florida with a guy who said, "Well, she's a secretary. What do you expect? She doesn't deserve more than $40,000. All she wants to do is have a right to bargain collectively for her rights." And that's not too much to ask for, is it?
Right. Walker hasn't gone after, at least in some of the legislation, he hasn't gone after police or firemen yet, though we've seen them come out in force in locked arms with other organized workers. Senator Feingold walked in with firemen, I think it was today or yesterday. What do you make of that?
Tremendous solidarity on the part of the firefighters and on the part of many of the police officers. What's been happening here is not only trying to divide and conquer public sector workers from private sector workers, but public sector workers from other public sector workers. So the governor tried to exempt the firefighters and the cops from his huge acts, and it's not working. The firefighters understand and the police officers understand that they're next. If Walker is allowed to take away bargaining rights for everybody else, he's going to come back and take theirs away too.
What role is Feingold playing in this? Have you spoken to him, and do you expect him to be a leader?
I haven't. I think I have a prediction to make about Russ Feingold. Russ Feingold will be the next governor of Wisconsin. Russ Feingold will take over before Walker's term is up because Walker will be recalled in the next year and a half.
That's a bold statement. He was just elected, and the GOP did just sweep into the House and Senate, and all of a sudden, is it possible that people could recall him this quickly?
He can be recalled starting in November, a year after the election, and he will be recalled because people, when they voted for him, first of all, it was only a tiny slice of the electorate that voted for him, and the people who voted for him, a lot of them didn't understand what they were voting for. Now they understand, and they don't like it one bit.